it is amazing. Our drummer, I have to pick on him because I was back there in tears watching him drum. You know, he studied at the prestigious School of Nowhere. And when he was a little boy, I've known him almost his whole life. And probably when he was, what, 6? I mean, right? 6, 7 when I met Jacob?
Jacob was 2.
Stop it.
Barely 2.
Okay, did we not think he was possessed?
Yeah.
Right? Right? We were like, Jason, get this demon out of this child. And he's back there drumming. He's leading us in worship. Right? Yeah, and I'm not picking on him because there's people, don't leave yet, I'm talking about you. And there's people that had certain expectations of Jacob in school or teachers or whatever or peers. And they could never see what God sees in him. You know, people can pass judgment on you and they can say what they think you should be. But God is writing your story. And today here he is. I mean, he's a young man. He's got, you know, he's in high school. He's got all these things in front of him, but yet he chooses to go home and practice drumming to lead us in worship. You know, and it's not just him. It's Jenna, and it's our keyboardist. It's our worship leader. It's our singers. It's amazing to see how God takes an eclectic group of people and says, together you are better together. Amen. And together you can do something that nobody else can see, but I can see it.
That's right.
And I'm overwhelmed by that.
That's right.
You know, I literally am. I'm overwhelmed by what God sees in me and what God sees in you. Don't ever let somebody else write your story. You let the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords write your story.
Amen.
Amen.
All right, you can go now, Jacob. Be gone. All right. So, I shared that story last week that kind of haunted me about remember the staff that was thrown down and the snake that ate the other 3 snakes and how creepy that is, right? So, I'm on this website, and I'm not going to tell you what it is, but I'm on this website. It's not a bad website, I just don't tell you what it is. If you know me, you know what it is. Because we are members of that website. It's a secret society website. No, this website, so this guy writes this thread, and he goes, nature, basically he says, like, nature is so, I forget the word he uses, but he talks about how, brutal nature is. And he shows a picture of 2 snakes in his front yard. And one snake, the black snake, is actually wrapped around this other snake. And he shows this picture, and the black snake has this we find out later it's a copperhead. And it has the copperhead's mouth in its mouth. So basically you have a snake that's literally eating another snake, which is what we just read in the Bible last week. Right? So I'm not a big snake guy. But as these guys are talking about these snakes, evidently there's some people in this world that know a lot about snakes. And they're like, yeah, that's the king snake. And king snakes actually hunt other snakes. And what's amazing about a king snake is that no matter how much that rattlesnake or that cottonmouth or whatever it was the venom tried to bite the king snake, it doesn't touch it, it doesn't phase it. It can't do anything. The venom can't do anything to the king snake. So while it's biting and throwing the venom out, slowly but surely this king snake is wrapping itself around the other snake and constricting and sucking the life out of it. Okay, now I'm like, crikey, that's amazing. Right? I mean, you get that. You get your crocodile hunter moment, right? So I'm sitting there, and it's like one of the last things I read before I go to bed. I'm laying there, I'm going, it's a king snake. Who can mess with the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords? Of course he's going to be able to take anything, any venom that was thrown at him. Because he's the king. And I thought to myself, can I go buy king snakes and put them all in my yard? Right? So I just want to tell you this morning, if you're battling stuff and you're going through something, listen to me, there is always a bigger snake. And nothing can touch him. The King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. I just thought that was absolutely amazing. And we were just reading it, and you're thinking to yourself, I mean, I gotta be honest with you. I mean, it never crossed my mind that there's snakes that eat other snakes. I just thought it was just kind of gross and part of the story. But yet, it happens. So today we're going to talk about, we're actually getting into the part of the story where we should have been in the beginning, but I had to set you up for a few weeks. So here it is. Let me give you 3 facts real quick about what you need to know before we dig into Exodus chapter number 7, verse number 14 is where we're going to be. Exodus 7, verse 14. There are 3 major facts about the plagues that we're going to look at. There's 10 plagues. There's 3 facts that you need to know about them. Number 1 is this. It was God's voice that predicted the plagues. You have to know that. God was very open and honest with Moses and Aaron in telling them that plagues are going to come. I am going to send these judgment upon Egypt. He's the one that said this. Not Moses, not Aaron, no magician. God is the one who ordained it and said it was going to happen. The second thing you need to remember is that it was Pharaoh's nature. It was Pharaoh's nature that required the plagues. In other words, everything that he did in response, God knew it ahead of time. And so the plagues were basically an answer to who he was as a person. By his nature, he was considered to be God incarnate. He was God in the flesh. And he was going up against the true God. Third thing you need to know is this, is that all the plagues reached all the Egyptians. Every single one of them. There wasn't an Egyptian in Egypt that didn't have a plague touch them or a part of what they were going through. So it wasn't, just a small group. It actually extended through the entire empire of the Egyptians. So, and I was thinking about this, and I know a lot of people, when they go through these plagues, they like to sit back and go, well, I mean, did the blood really hit all of Egypt? Did the frogs really come out and really, was it just a group? Was it like just a part of it, or was it every part? And you have to determine in your heart either whether the stories we're about to read and the plagues are about to happen really did happen, or you could just kind of make them up as you go. Or maybe they were just allegories or symbols or whatever. I don't know about you, but when I read it and the Bible tells me that when I look at the water turning to blood, I believe that it was basically the water turning into blood. Now, do I believe it was actual literal blood that it turned into? I don't think it was. I think it may have had more of a point of the fact that it turned red. A lot of us live in Florida. All of us live in Florida, right? And we have a thing called red tide. And that might be something to this, where the redness, it turns the water red. But the problem with that is, okay, we can see it with the Nile, but the Bible also says, as we're going to read into it in a moment, that it actually hit all of the water supply. It didn't just come through the Nile. It was in their water barrels. It was in their wells. It was in their bowls. Like every water they had, they were drinking wood, turned to red, turned to blood. And so, and then we also know, we'll look, it only lasted for 7 days. So it actually kind of cleared itself out. So I think there's something to it. In the Hebrew word that we're going to look at, it actually says that it even got into the trees and on the rocks. It's crazy. So this water contamination reached every facet of Egyptian life. So here we go. Here's a text. You ready? Exodus chapter number 7, verse number 14. The Bible reads this. Then the Lord said to Moses, Pharaoh's heart is stubborn, and he still refuses to let the people go. So go to Pharaoh in the morning as he goes down to the river. Stand on the bank of the Nile and meet him there. Be sure to take along the staff that turned into the snake. Don't forget your power source. Then announce to him, the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, has sent me to tell you, let my people go. so they can worship me in the wilderness. Until now, you have refused to listen to him. So this is what the Lord says, I will show you that I am the Lord. He said, look, I will strike the water of the Nile with this staff in my hand, and the river will turn to blood. The fish will die, and the river will stink. The Egyptians will never be able to drink any of the water from the Nile. Then the Lord said to Moses, tell Aaron to take your staff and raise your hand over the waters of Egypt, and all of its rivers, canals, ponds, and reservoirs. Turn all the water to blood, everywhere in Egypt, and the water will turn to blood, even the water stored in wooden bowls and stone pots. So Moses and Aaron did just as the Lord commanded them. As Pharaoh and all of his officials watched, Aaron raised his staff and struck the water of the Nile. Suddenly, in a moment, you have to realize, it's suddenly, the whole river turned to blood. The fish in the river died, and the water became so foul that the Egyptians couldn't drink it. There was blood everywhere throughout the land of Egypt. But again, the magicians of Egypt used their magic, and they too turned water into blood. Now, what's amazing to me about this, as I'm reading the text, and I don't know if it dawned on you, but I thought to myself, okay, they can duplicate this plague. But if you're on the opposite end of receiving the plague, wouldn't you, want to stop it? Wouldn't you want to have some kind of thing where the red was moving in, and then you did your magic, and it became clear again? No. And we don't even know how they did it. Maybe they had food dye. Maybe they just dyed water. Look, it's red here. I can make it. I don't know how they are able to do it, but the Bible says that they are able to reproduce it. And it says this, verse 22 again, it says, but then again the magicians of Egypt used their magic, and they too turned water into blood. Which, by the way, just a little side note, the first 3 plagues, it says that the magicians were able to reproduce. And it says this, so Pharaoh's heart remained hard, and he refused to listen to Moses and Aaron, just as the Lord had predicted. Verse 23 is, this is a human response. You ready? So Pharaoh returned to his palace and put the whole thing out of his what? I ain't dealing with it. Right? You just saw your entire water supply go to blood, and you're like, yeah, I ain't dealing with this today. I got too many things to worry about. I'm going to go watch a movie. That's what I do. If I don't want to deal with something, I'm like, find me a movie. I want to watch somebody else's drama and let my drama left alone, right? I want to find the craziest thing to watch because I don't want to deal with my world. Verse 24 says this, then all the Egyptians, look, this is amazing, dug along the riverbank to find drinking water, for they couldn't drink the water from the Nile. 7 days passed from the time the Lord struck the Nile, and we know that after 7 days, this plague lasted. That's how long it lasted. Now, I told you that this whole sermon series is about God confronting other gods. It's about really 1 versus 80. It's about one God saying to everybody, I am the true God. And what I've learned is, as I'm going through this, what we're going to see is that the Nile represents, it's everything to the Egyptians. It's everything. It's how you travel, right? You travel on a boat, you go up and down the Nile. That's what they did. You go, if you want to eat and you're hungry, you don't go to a restaurant, you go to the Nile to go fishing. You catch things. So it's a transport. It's a water supply. You drink the water. It's how you eat. It's if you're a salesman and you got to get a product to somebody else, what do? You get on a boat in the Nile and you ship it somewhere. It's how you make your money. It's the source of everything. It's everything in the life of an Egyptian. When you look at the Nile, and you were back then and you saw the Nile, you knew that the Nile was life. It was life. It sustained you, it fed you, it clothed you, it gave you security, it gave you everything. I thought to myself, man, out of all the plagues, why was this number one? Why did God from the very beginning say, go after their source of everything? And here's what I have. Within the Nile, there were 3 different Egyptian gods that they worshiped as part of the Nile. So I'm probably going to ruin their names, but I'm going to give them to you anyway, because that's just what we're going to do. So the first point that I have is this: the significance of the first plague. So the first one was Cunam. He had a man's body with a ram's head. He's one of the earliest gods of Egypt. He was the god of water and procreation. He is the guardian of the river. So people would go out and worship him, half man, half ram's head. Seriously. I want to know what else you're growing to come up with these pictures of your gods. Okay. So the other one is, the second one is Kapi or Hapi. It depends on how you want to say it or pronounce it, but it's Hapi. The Egyptian Nile god who was believed to bring the silt to the banks of the Nile. One of his titles was Lord of the River, bringing vegetation. It's a long title, right? He was often represented as basically both male and female. He's a god that's depicted as partly male and partly female in his appearance. He's always blue in color, and he has a crown of papyrus or of lotus plants. So when you look at ancient, Egyptian hieroglyphics, you'll see, if you see a man in a ram's head, you'll know that's one of their gods. And the other one has like a bluish color. And that's Hapi. The last one is Osiris. Osiris was the Egyptian god of death, the underworld, and rebirth. He was depicted as a human god without a head of an animal. His image is also included in basically what has a divine beard. What's amazing is that he is the one, you see him a lot, but he is the God that controls death and the rebirth. If you wanted someone to come back to life that would have died, you would go to him. I want to ask you a question. Who controls you? And this is what I want you to ask yourself this morning. What is my Nile River? What is it in my life that I feel like gives me a source of hope, a source of security, a source of strength, a source of power? What is my Nile? Because all of us have a Nile in our lives. All of us. All of us have a Nile where it's a source that we go to, and it can be, in our society, it could be anything. It could be your retirement. Man, remember 2007, 2006, people were like, man, my retirement is off the chain. 2008, they're like, I lost it all. How quickly it can turn. Some people think that they find their hope and their strength and maybe in the degrees that they accumulate. Okay, that's nice and all, but is that really going to give you the hope? Maybe it is wealth. Maybe it is prestige. Maybe it is who you think you are. And you have to realize that there's a Nile that wants to flow through us. And we have to understand that there's only one God that wants to become your Nile. It's Him. This is what Pharaoh said in Exodus 5:2. He says, Moses comes to him and he goes, let my people go. And he goes, who is this God? There's people today that say that same thing. Who is this God that you speak of? Who is this Jesus that you claim resurrected from the dead? And why should I listen to him? And why should I obey him? And why should I raise my children to learn about him? Who is this? I'm just telling you, you ask that question, you're going to get the answer. And Pharaoh got it. The Nile River becomes blood. They worship the river because it was the one who brought wealth and significance to people. The second point today is the strong hand of God against these false Egyptian gods. These gods promise, listen, these gods promise a rich and full life to the Egyptians. What gods in our society promise that to us? Man, if you can just get a new car, people would just look at you differently. Man, if you could just lose 10 pounds, you know what? Your life would be so much better. That's a big one. Man, if I could just tuck this, move this, lift this up, push this down, take this out. Man, I would just feel so much better about myself, and everything would be amazing. And if I could, if I could just go to the gym, and if I could just, if I could have more muscles. Unlike Jason, right? Judy goes, Jason, please stop working out. You're way too muscular. You're too much like a Greek god. Who needs a six-pack when you can have a keg? I'm just saying. I mean, we say all these things, right? I mean, are you with me so far? These are the things that tell us they'll make us happy. Man, if I could just be in a relationship, if I could just have someone that will love me, if I have someone that will accept me, that I'll be happier. No, you won't. If you're not happy now, how are you going to be happy with somebody else? When they don't make the bed, or clean the room, or flush the toilet, or put the seat down, or close the freezer, or quit drinking from the carton. None of that happens in my house. I'm just saying it for you. You know what I'm saying? We say all these things. If I could just do this and do this and do, if I had this, or if I had a bigger house, if I had better children, I'm just telling you, we all these things play into it. If I would be so happy, and God says, I am the source of your happiness. You have to understand that when God attacks the Nile, He's attacking the very source of what brings people happiness and wealth and contentment. That's why He's attacking. That's why it's the very first thing. God says, you got to know who I am. Egypt had everything it could want. Listen to me. Egypt was really the first main big dynasty. World power. We still can see their pyramids that they built for their dead. Not even for the living, right? They had everything. The Nile was everything. They had a great navy. They protected themselves. I mean, they had pharaoh after pharaoh after pharaoh, families after families after families that had dynasties. And they had so many pharaohs, we can't even keep track of them. That's how long they were in power. Why wouldn't they feel prideful? Why wouldn't they feel some kind of sense of, man, the Nile is where it's all about? Third thing is this, the similar way in which we subject ourselves to false gods. My survival and success is dependent upon my ability to sell, provide, and accumulate stuff. There's a word that Judy and I talk about from time to time. There's a word called mammon. And mammon is another term for like wealth and money, but there's a thing called the spirit of mammon. And if you were to ask me, what does America battle the most? What do American churches battle the most? It's mammon. It's all about money and stuff. And we live our lives to accumulate so much stuff. And what do we do? I mean, look how shallow we are. We spend our days working and then working extra. We get all this, we get houses and cars and clothes and stuff and stuff and stuff and stuff and stuff. And then what do? We have nowhere to put all this stuff, so we have what we call a garage sale or a yard sale. You with me so far? Then you go and you put all this wonderful stuff that you spent time and effort and energy into buying. And believe me, some of it's nice. And you lay it on a table and you tell your neighbors, come pick through my stuff. And I will sell it to you pennies on the dollar. Pennies on the dollar. You ever been with somebody who will go to a yard sale and there's a t-shirt. It's like $5. They're like, hey, you take $3.50? No, it's $5. That's a good shirt. $5. All right, how about $4? You take $4? No. And you'll sit there and you will haggle with them. And then they leave. You don't sell the shirt because no one's paying $5 for a t-shirt at a yard sale. You don't want it. So what do? You put it in a box because Sunday night you got to have your junk out by the trash. So you take it to the trash and you put it out in the front yard for the trash men to pick up. Because you ain't selling it for $3.50. And that person who haggled with you came back to your house at midnight, picked that box up and got it for free. I mean, that's how messed up our society is. Jason, how would you know this? Are you saying you've done this before? I cannot confirm nor deny that I have either been with somebody or I have been a part of putting stuff in the back of a truck called junking. One man's trash is what? Another man's... There it is, people. How messed up are we? Right? We go to stores. I mean, I don't know about you. This is how I shop. I walk into a store and I go, where's the sale rack? And I will go right to the sale rack. And I'm not talking 20. You can take your 20% and stick it up your nose. I want 75% and then another 25% on top of that, right? I mean, that's what I want. I want buy one, get two free. You can take your BOGOs back to wherever. I want buy one, get two, buy one, get three. But just take the whole lot. That's how we shop. And here's what's dumb about us. We go to those clearance racks and we pick out a shirt, and it might be our size. But it was a $50 shirt that we can buy for $12.50. It don't fit us. Then we say, that shirt just gonna make me want to work. Little sit-ups, watch what I eat so I can get in this shirt. You hang the shirt up in your closet. You don't see that shirt for years. And then it goes to the back. And then you go, I gotta clean my closet out. Then you go and grab it. It has the tag on it. And then you say to yourself, why did I buy this? It's ugly. But in the moment, you got so excited that you got it for $12.50. We are just messed up. And that's how we live. And we live our lives that way. And we go shopping that way. And we accumulate stuff that way. And excuse me, I want to tell you that God says to us that He's the source of our happiness. Now, am I saying it's wrong to shop? No. Am I saying it's wrong to buy stuff? No. I'm just saying that sometimes we get into a place in our lives where we just buy things we don't need. But it makes us feel good. You might say, well, I'm not a clothing guy, I'm a car guy, or I'm a house person, or I'm a vacation person. And all these things might do us good for the moment, but you know what I love about vacation? I actually love the day before you go on vacation. You know why? Because you got so much to look forward to, right? And what's the worst thing about vacation? Jorge's in the back going, I know he's going, I know he's going. You got to come home. Right? That's why people who come to Orlando, they come in oh, I love Orlando. It's so great. Oh, man, this is my getaway. I'm moving here. Then they move here and they realize you got to pay taxes, you got to pay bills, you got to pay for it. Ain't vacation. Man, it's hot in the summertime. See, people right now, y'all are complaining about the rain. You know what I'm saying? Praise Jesus for the rain, because July and August are around the corner. Take your 73, 75, 83 degrees all day long. Because it's getting ready to go from 83 to 95 to hell. Y'all know it's true. Little kids are going, that just jacked me up. I mean, like hot ass. Okay, so the literal place, right? I mean, we all know it. Where you walk out of your car from the AC, you're dripping sweat. You're taking 3 steps. You go into another AC room, and you're like, oh, that's how you survive. How many of you guys lived in Florida without an air conditioner? I did. How in the world did we do that? I didn't get air conditioning in my school till the 6th grade. Can you imagine being an elementary teacher back in Florida with a bunch of kids that don't belong to you? In the heat? That's why back then you could spank kids in the classroom. You had to. I'm so hot. I can't do my work. Whoops. I can do a little bit. Right? It's crazy. All right. So why did God go at the Nile? He went at the Nile because he wanted the Egyptians to know that he was the source for everything. Right? And that's what you have to say to yourself. Who is my source for happiness? Who is my source for my strength? Who's my source for my joy? Who gives me this source? And you have to remember it's always going to be the Lord. Amen. It's always going to be Him. Let me give you just a couple of thoughts here. You ready? Through the first plague, God showed everyone that He was the source for all success and happiness in life. So my question to you then is, what is your Nile? And don't be in denial about it. Though the first plague, God showed everyone that happiness is never found in money and power and prestige. Pharaoh had all the power, but when can you just imagine? He's standing there. And these 2 old men won't leave him alone. He's like, man, I'm not even in my palace. I'm out by the river. I'm hanging out. I'm drinking my coffee, my little macchiato, right? I'm enjoying life. I'm going, oh. And then I look around and there's these 2 old men, 80 and 83 years old, following me. I'm going, are you serious? They won't leave me alone. And what does he do? He sees it. He's like, okay, that's great. Okay, that's great. We can do it. And he just goes, I'm just not dealing with this. I'm going home. But see, God won't let you do that. God's going to make you deal with stuff. I mean, you can go back home. You can sit in your room. You can close the door. But in a week's time, you're going to have a knock on your door. And those same 2 old men are going to be there like, I got something else for you. Through the first plague, God showed everyone that happiness is never found in money, power, or prestige. Through the first plague, God showed everyone that He is the one who controls all things. This is a beautiful one. God controls it all. He controls everything for us. There's not a day that goes by where that He's not controlling your life. He is speaking to you. He is leading you. He is guiding you. He loves you. He cares about you. He is the source of everything. That's why we wake up on a rainy day when we'd rather stay in bed, but we know God's got something for us. Amen. Because He's our source. Because if I don't come to church today, I might miss something. It's a lot funnier in person than on Facebook. Get your behind the church. Right? Because we need each other. All right, so here it is. You ready? Let me give you just 3 thoughts for you, and I promise I'll close. Here it is. Who controls you and what the source of your happiness is? We have to answer that question, but as you're here to answer that question, let me give you 3 thoughts. The first one is this. Here's what you have to tell yourself. You ready? I am His. I am His. You know what that means? You belong to Him. He doesn't want to be your source for happiness because he wants to show you how great he is. He wants you to be your source of happiness because of how much he loves you. And how much he cares about you. Let me read this verse to you. John 10 says it this way: my sheep listen to my voice. I know them, and they follow me. I give them eternal life, and they will never perish. No one can snatch them away from me, for my Father has given them to me, and he is more powerful than anyone else. The king snake. No one can snatch them from my Father's hand, and the Father and I are one. You are his. You belong to him. He loves you, he cares about you, and he thinks about you every day. There's not a day that goes by that God's not up there going, I have so much for you today. I just need you to follow me. And you might get bit by another snake. And you might have a hard time, and you might go through a struggle, but God says, just realize you belong to me. Trust me. Second thing is this, I want you to tell yourself, is that I am loved and valued. Matthew 10, chapter 10, verse 29 through 30 says, what is the price of 2 sparrows? 1 copper coin? In other words, what's the price of just 2 sparrows? I mean, it's nothing, a couple pennies. But not a single sparrow can fall to the ground without your Father knowing it. Right. And the very hairs on your head are numbered. He can add and subtract those, just so you know. So don't be afraid. You are more valuable to God than a whole flock of sparrows. That's right. Amen. Can I tell you something? God's never going to put you on his yard sale table. Hallelujah. You're not a mistake. How many times do we think that we hear that voice that we're a mistake, or God doesn't care, or God is distant? And Jesus says, don't you realize the most worthless thing in the world, I know who they are, I know where they're at. And if I know about them, what do you think I think about you? My wife and I are studying something together, which is what we do. It's kind of funny. We never really did it a whole lot because we were always in different offices, but since we work together, and she has to listen to what I say, we're studying some stuff. And one of the things that we're studying is John 15 about the vine and the branches. And Jesus says to his disciples, he goes, you need to realize that I am the vine and you are the branches. And it says in here, and we study it, it says in there that if a branch doesn't produce fruit, that I cut it off. You ever heard that? Can I tell you something? In our studies and what we've heard and what we've learned and what we've read, in sermons that we've listened to, that is actually a bad translation. He doesn't cut you off. It should be he lifts you up. Because if a branch on the vine doesn't produce fruit, usually it's because it has fallen, it is in the dirt, it is muddy, it is miry, it's nasty. And what the vine dresser does, he comes over and he picks the branch up, cleans it off, cuts back all the dead stuff, and takes it and ties it to the top so the branch can get more sun and begin to grow and thrive again and produce fruit. You ask a vine dresser, do you go to your vine and cut the branches off? And the vine dresser will say, all of the branches are too valuable. Why would you cut off something that produces fruit? That's designed to produce fruit. That's right. Now he'll cut you back so that you will start producing fruit. But when I say this to you, you are loved and you are valued. See, here's the problem. We think God is this old man with this lightning bolt watching us on a chessboard, waiting us to make the wrong move, and then he's going to strike us dead if we make a wrong move. Does that look like Jesus in the Bible? this sound like Jesus? So don't be afraid. You are more valuable to God than a whole flock of sparrows. You know how much you're worth? You're priceless. You're absolutely priceless. And though you make mistakes, though I make mistakes, though we do dumb things, it doesn't stop God from loving us. It doesn't stop him from working in our lives. And that's really what he's telling Egypt. Don't you realize that I am the true? You don't have to go out to the Nile and make sacrifices. I am the one that controls all things. You don't have to do all that crazy stuff. Let me give you one last one. You ready? And I think this is the most important one. I am thankful. I'm thankful. I'm his. I am loved and valued, and I'm thankful. Colossians 3, verses 16 to 24 says, let the message about Christ be in all its richness. Fill your lives. Teach and counsel each other with all wisdom that he gives. Sing psalms and hymns and spiritual songs to God. Listen, with a thankful heart. Some of us, when we worship, we're like, oh my gosh, we get to sing. I can't carry a tune, but I get to sing. I'm singing. Right? I mean, we're animated because why? We're thankful. Amen. Some of you are here this morning, you couldn't sing because you're stressed. I'd love to sing, but I'm really nervous right now, and I'm thinking about other stuff, and I got so much to do, and after church I've got to do this, and I have to do that. And God's going, let it go. Sing to me. Right. Be thankful for what you have. Amen. Be thankful. Have a thankful heart. In verse 17 says, and whatever you do or say, do it as a representative of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks through him to God the Father. You are his representative. Right. And everything that you say and do, how you treat each other, what you say about people, how people respond to you. Let them see Jesus in you. And they'll say, why are you so weird? And you say, you don't understand, man. I was on drugs and God saved me. I was an alcoholic and he saved me. And my life was going nowhere. All I did was work. And I didn't stop and look at my family and was thankful for what God gave me. I kept looking at something else and something more and something better. And I just said, God, man, I have you. If I lose everything and still have you, would you have enough? That's when he becomes your source. Though your river of supply gets polluted and gets messed up and jacked up, God says, you still have me. That makes sense what I'm saying? Amen. So why would this not be the first plague? Seriously, look, God's going, look at me. You got a half man with a ram's head? Are you kidding me? That looks weird. That's the thing you pray to? That's what's protecting your Nile? You got a bluish guy. He's an alien. Is he male? Is he female? We don't even know. He's confused. How can somebody confused be your God? Right. Yes. Because I could take a couple old men with a stick. I can do this all day long. Matter of fact, next week we're going to carry this on. Can you imagine for the next 7 days, you're not going to be able to drink water. Where are you going to go? What are you going to do? Rely on the Lord. I just want to tell you that God has shown me who he is. Amen. And I thought I knew who he was, and then he just shows up and rocks my world. Amen. And I want to tell you, this church does not rely on the pastor or its leaders. This church relies on the Holy Spirit to lead us and guide us and do what we want. And our job is to listen and obey him. Amen. Right? Amen. Right. That's our job. Our job is to follow him Our job is to let him lead us. Our job is to say, God, you are our source. And not fearful. Why are we fearful? Because might be a snake in my yard. Well, check this out. Here comes the king snake.
Right.
But what if he bites it? Bite all you want. It won't do anything to him. He's going to strangle and suck the life out of that snake. Why? Because that's what he does. Don't mess with the king. Will you bow your heads with me? If you're here today and you're struggling and you're in fear and all you want to do is, like Pharaoh, go back to your room and not think about it, I'm going to tell you that's not the solution. The only solution you have is to give it and surrender to God. Stop listening to the lies of the enemy. You belong to him. You are loved. And you are valuable. And he is not a distant God, but he's very close to you. And he is working diligently in your life to show you who he is. And it doesn't mean that your life is going to be simple and easy, but it does mean that he will be there. Be with you every step of the way. He is your source. Through it all, he's your source. He's your reference point. He's your plumb line. He's your horizon. He's your true north. That's what he has to be to you. That's what he wants to be to everybody's life. Because he's incredible. He's patient. He's kind. He's long-suffering. He's true. And we belong to him. That's the truth. What is your Nile? And I hope you can say after today, my Nile is the Lord Almighty. Father, we come before you. We search our hearts. We face our fears. We abandon our past. We embrace our future. We can do all of these things because of you. You are our source of happiness. You are our source of hope. You are our source of joy. We embrace every trial, every tribulation, every pain that you give us, and we do it gladly because we know you're working in our lives. Speak to our hearts. We love you, we praise you, we honor you, we thank you. And we ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. Would you stand with me and worship?